Hi and welcome to Rosebread Homestead. We're so glad to have you with us today. As you know, we focus on food security, self-reliance, and emergency preparedness. And we do appreciate it when you share our videos with others. We're so anxious to get the word out on safe canning and how to be prepared for whatever is coming at us in the coming days. So thank you so much for being with us. Today we're going to continue our series on lessons in bread making, and we're going to start learning a few specialty breads. And today we're going to learn how to do rye bread, and I've practiced on this and boy is it ever good. So we will get started in just a moment. Rye bread has a lot of strong flavors in it. That's the whole point. And so we're going to be adding strong flavors by using seeds and herbs and even some pickle juice. And this is a recipe that comes from King Arthur flour. I made rye bread several times and I just thought I would try their recipe, and by far it immediately became my favorite recipe. So at the bottom of the description I am going to post the link to this recipe. Now I do a little bit different method, mimicking what we've already learned, and so we'll be incorporating some of the processes that we already know with this recipe from King Arthur. Now they use pumpernickel flour, same as rye flour, and I have rye seed. We buy rye in 50-pound bags as the grain, and then I just run it through my grain mill and I make a lovely rye flour. So this is the rye flour that we're going to be using, and what we're going to do, I'm going to run through the ingredients and I will give you the amounts, but the whole recipe you'll have access to. We are going to mix our dry ingredients together in this bowl, and then we are going to measure out the wet ingredients, and I'm going to put them in the microwave because the pickle juice is cold. It's right out of the refrigerator, and we like to have the liquid to just about 100 degrees, and so that's how we're going to proceed. So the first thing, and remember we're going to be doing things by weight because that is a much more accurate way of measuring things. And we use gram weights, and so I'm hoping by now you have a little kitchen scale that will give you both gram measurements and standard measurements, because that's the best way to think about having a kitchen scale. So we're going to use 298 grams of our regular King Arthur flour. Now if you're measuring by volume, this is 2.5 cups, but I don't recommend that. And in their recipe, they give a range of the amount of water, and they say you just have to mix it until it gets to the right consistency, depending on the humidity in your area. So we'll talk about that when we get there. So 298 grams, 298 grams. So here we go. And then with the rye flour, and this is freshly ground, and I'm using the recipe because this is a recipe that I'm not super familiar with, so I just have it right here. I want to be sure that I'm accurate, and this is the one that you can download as well. So this is 1 1/3 cups, or 138 grams. So we're going to go with the 138 grams, and in goes the rye flour. And now I have a collection of dry ingredients. This is 3/4 cup of mashed potato flakes. And these are Bob's Red Mill. Be sure that if you're going to be using potato flakes that you get just the plain potato flakes and not with salt and butter added. And then this is 1 tablespoon of sugar, 1.5 teaspoons of salt, and then 1 1/4 teaspoons of caraway seed. And I have these all lined up right here. I'll put them up here so you can see them. Caraway seed. So there are 3 seeds. There's going to be dill, caraway, and mustard seed that are all in here. And it's 1 1/4 of caraway, 1 1/4 of dill, and then 1 whole tablespoon of mustard seed. And so that goes in here. So salt, sugar, and then the seeds. We need 2 1/2 teaspoons of our yeast. It needs to be mixed in there as well. And that's just shy of a tablespoon, so I'm going to do it that way. And this is instant yeast, but you can use active dry yeast as well, and you don't need to pre-moisten it ahead of time. I know a lot of people do that. It's an extra step. They like to check their yeast. I use yeast so often I already know that mine is good. So now let's mix again. All right, so everything is evenly distributed. Now we're going to get our wet ingredients together. All right, the recipe calls for 2/3 to 7/8 cups of water, or 152 grams to 198 grams of lukewarm water. So I'm just going to arbitrarily pick 160 grams to start with. And we may need to add more, and that's perfectly fine. Then I'm going to put in 1/4 cup of oil and 3/4 cup of pickle juice. And I was quite surprised at this ingredient. I've never used pickle juice in my rye bread until I found this recipe. So this is dill pickle juice, and it's cold from the fridge. And because we care a lot about the temperature of the liquid as we add it to the dry ingredients, I'm just going to check it right now. And it is 70 degrees. So I want to heat this up to between 100 and maybe 105. So we'll be back when this is warm. So the liquids are up to temperature, just a little bit over 100 degrees, and we're just going to add those now right to the dry ingredients, and we're going to add it all at once. Now, if you have a stand mixer, King Arthur recommends that you use it. And what they say to do, and I always mix with my bare hands so that I can feel the texture of the dough. I know this grosses some people out. I've had comments about that, but you know what? It's the way I do it. So if you don't want to do it this way, by all means, choose whatever method you like. What King Arthur suggests is that you turn the mixer on until the flour is absorbed, and then let it rest for a few minutes. And we're going to do the same thing, only we're just going to do it by hand. They say that if you use a stand mixer, it is going to ultimately rise higher than if you mix it by hand. And I always love a challenge, so I mixed this by hand last time, and I had a perfectly good rise. So I really don't know about that. So once it gets like this, then we just need to let it sit where apparently the liquid has been absorbed, but not completely. And so we're just going to let this sit for about 20 minutes so that the liquid can completely absorb, and then we will come back and start the kneading process. It has been 20 minutes, so let's check our dough. And okay, I can tell that some more absorption has taken place. I'm going to put a little bit of flour down. All right, now the kneading process starts, and this, if you have a stand mixer, is where you would put it in your stand mixer, and according to King Arthur, you would knead this on medium with the dough hook for about 7 minutes. Now, what I'm going to do is to follow our basic procedure that we've learned in our other bread videos, and that is I'm going to knead for a few minutes, and then I'm going to let it rest for 15 minutes. And then I'm going to come back and knead again, and we'll develop the gluten that way, while the stand mixer develops the gluten by 7 straight minutes. So I'm going to knead for about another 5 minutes or so, and then let it rest for 15 minutes, and then come back and knead some more and let it rest. And when we think the gluten is developed, then we will go on to the next step. So I'll be back when all of this kneading process is finished. It has been a little bit over a half an hour since we last left you. And during that time, I kneaded it for 5 minutes and let it rest for 15. Kneaded for 5, rest for 15. And that's where we are right now. So I'm going to remove, and it has risen just a little bit. Now, the dough was just a little bit sticky as I was kneading, and so I put flour out on the counter just like this. And as I was kneading, it did pick up some flour, and what we want is for this dough to not be sticky at all. And so this is the final kneading that I'm going to be doing, and I'm just going to do it for a couple of minutes. The dough needs to be soft, it needs to be very manageable, it needs to be smooth and not at all sticky. Once it starts sticking to my hands or to the countertop, I dust with flour a little bit more. And King Arthur says the only way to really develop the gluten to the extent that is needed is to use a stand mixer. But I know that not all of you have a stand mixer, which is why I choose to do it this way. People with stand mixers know how to do that. So I'm showing this, and we're going to get a fine loaf of bread regardless of not being able to do it in a stand mixer. Okay, this is ready to go. It's very nice and smooth, except of course for the lumps with the seeds. And here's my bowl. I have a little bit of oil, you probably can't see that, in the bottom. And I'm just going to use the dough to move it around a little bit. And then I'll turn it this way. And we're going to cover it with a plastic bag. And our sun is beginning to encroach on the countertop here, so I'm going to put it right in the sun. And we are going to allow it to rise until it is just about double. And depending on the temperature of my kitchen, or the humidity, or a lot of other factors, it may take between 1 or 2 hours. When we come back, I will show you how I know that it is ready, and then we're going to shape it and put it in this cute little Pullman pan. And this Pullman pan, I've used it one time, so I'm still getting used to it, is very, very square. This is the smaller size, and we put the lid on as it is rising, and that way it gives us, there we go, it gives us a very nice squared up loaf that is perfect for sandwiches. So that's what we'll do when we come back. The dough is ready. I tested it just a couple minutes ago. You can see how much it has risen. And the way that we test is I just push my finger in, and if it comes back slowly, then it's ready to go. And so it's ready to go. Now what we have to do here is degas it. So we want to very carefully degas it. And then to shape it, we're just going to roll it up tightly. I pull and stretch just a little bit. And then I want to pinch this in place. Now it's way too long, so we're just going to kind of mash these ends in somewhat. Sort of pinch it all together. It doesn't need to be as careful as some of the other ones that we have done. We just need to be sure that the mass is pretty much equally distributed along the log. And I have lightly greased the inside of this. And so I'm going to just put it in here. And then we have to just mash this down. Flatten it out, push it into the corners. We want it to rise evenly across. All right, and then I'm just going to put the lid on, and we're going to leave it like this and let it rise again. And that will probably take about an hour. So we'll see you back when it is ready to go into the oven. I'm standing way over here because I'm trying to dodge the sunlight, which is right there. So take a look. Here we go. I'm going to very carefully open this up. Oh boy. All right, I'm not going to open it up. It has hit the top of that lid. So we already have a higher rise than I had on my first one. So I'm going to put it in the oven just like this. Now the pan is going to constrain it, and so it's going to make it more dense, and it should fill in all the cracks and become a nice squared off loaf. So I have the oven preheated to 350. It will take probably about 40 minutes for this to cook, and we will bring you back when I take it out of the oven. I just took this out of the oven, so it is moment of truth time. So let's slide this off. Oh my goodness, look at that. Look at that. Now I did grease the inside of this lid so that it would slide easily. When it was dough and it was stuck to the underside, then it didn't slide so easily. But because now it's a crust on top and it was slick with the greasing, then it came out just fine. So we have a beautiful loaf of sandwich bread. Now, the other thing I want to check is to be sure that it is browned all the way around. If it's not, it's going to go back in the oven, just bare naked like that. But look, we have a gorgeous brown all the way around. And so there is our wonderful loaf of rye sandwich bread. My mouth is watering. I am envisioning a Reuben sandwich with all of that pastrami and sauerkraut and brown mustard. Oh my goodness sake, I cannot wait. So this is really, really fun. And it makes it extra fun with this pan, this Pullman pan. And there is a French name for it as well, but we'll just call it the Pullman pan. And I bought this from King Arthur's. But you can get them on Amazon, you can get them anywhere you can get them. This recipe fits this size perfectly. We would need to make a larger dough ball if we were going to use the longer Pullman pan. This is cooled for about a half an hour, and Jim and I cannot stand it for another minute. This lovely smell is filling the whole house. So we're going to cut it so we can check the crumb, let you see the density on the inside. So there it is. And you can see that it is quite dense, but that's how we want this sandwich bread. It will hold together and it will carry the whole load of a lovely Reuben sandwich. So, oh my goodness, it just smells so good. This is our first specialty bread. And so stay tuned, more coming up. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you at our next video.